Namaste and welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity. We're going to continue answering a question I started to answer previously, but the computer, the camera, told me that I need to make more space. So I did make more space, and here I am. The question I received was, there's a couple of them here to find out when I was reading. How did Carl Jung define synchronicity, and what did he mean? How did Carl Jung define synchronicity, and what did he mean? Now, he defined synchronicity in this way. Synchronicity is a meaningful coincidence, between two or more events where the probability of chance is not involved. It's a meaningful coincidence between two or more events where the probability of chance is not involved. It's a meaningful coincidence. And what is a coincidence? Two incidents coinciding, two incidents coming together at the same time. Okay? What we consider time. Time, of course, is just a philosophical idea, right? It's a concept. And it's very relative. But what we consider to be real time, we have two incidents coming together, and they create some type of meaning. If you put your, say for example, I don't want to use the afterlife as a coincidence because it can apply to anything, but I'm just thinking this one just came to my head where you are outside and you just lost a loved one who loved butterflies, and all of a sudden this beautiful butterfly lands on your shoulder. That two incidents, the loss of a loved one a few days ago who happened to love butterflies, or because it could be three, you could say the loss of the loved one and her love of butterflies, and the butterfly landing on your shoulder, all within a measure of time that's very, close. So you have that. So that's three events happening at the same time. And it has meaning for you, right? That's the big thing. It has meaning for you because you're thinking of your loved one. You know she loves butterflies. You're grieving her, and then this butterfly that you just say, oh my gosh, that's nice just to have the butterfly land on your shoulder. But because it has meaning with the other events or incidents in this coincidence, we consider it meaningful. Okay, so that is a coincidence, a meaningful coincidence. So synchronicity has to be a meaningful coincidence where events come together and they have meaning for us. But the biggest part of that equation is, he says, where the probability of chance is not involved. Where the probability of chance is not involved. So the likelihood of that happening at the time that it did, all those circumstances coming together in that short period of time, is very, very small. And that's what makes synchronicity. So it's a meaningful coincidence, but the probability of it happening is so small, you have to say it's not chance, it's not random. It had to be more than that, right? It had to be planned or something. There's some other thing behind it besides randomness in the bringing of these three events together. Right? So that's synchronicity. According to Carl Jung, who was a famous psychiatrist who studied under Freud, and he was doing the psychoanalysis for a while, but he got very, very interested in the unconscious, and he explored dreams, and he explored our shadow selves, those disconnected part of ourselves that we hide within our unconscious and we become unaware of. So he was a pioneer in his field as far as unconsciousness and therefore consciousness. So he was very much into consciousness and understanding the human mind in that way. So he came up with this term synchronicity, and it's been used many times since. If you just look at the word synchronicity, we're talking about chronological time, the chrono, and then we're talking about syncing. So things are syncing. Things are coming together in this chronological sense of time that we're having. and they have meaning for us. And most importantly, the probability of them coming together in the way they did is very, very low. We cannot say it's chance. Or let's look at that, for example. Say we have two incidents. Putting your hand on a hot stove and the feeling of pain. Two total different incidents coming together in a minute of time, what we consider time. So it's meaningful, sure, because it hurts like the dickens. But the probability of chance is very, very high that would happen. Almost 100%. If you put your hand on a hot stove, it's going to hurt. So those incidents come together in that period of time. And they're meaningful to some degree, but the probability is very, very likely that they will happen. So that's not synchronicity, right? But say, for example, in the chances of a butterfly landing on your shoulder is pretty low, right? The chance of it happening when you just lost someone a few days ago who happened to love butterflies is even lower. But say if that were to happen in a snowstorm, this butterfly came out of nowhere and landed on your shoulder a few days after you lost your loved ones. Now, that even decreases the probability where you say, well, this can't be chance. Maybe the other one, when it happened in summertime that landed on you, you say there's some chance here. There's some randomness to this, some probability that this is just chance and luck. But in the snowstorm, none. So there are times when this synchronicity takes place because the probability of chance is so small. And I studied statistics. I somehow passed statistics in university. I don't know how, because numbers were never my thing. But luckily I did. So I understand probability to some extent. And you can put probability numbers using equations on the likelihood of things happening all over the place. And Dean Radin, who was a parapsychologist, I don't know if he likes referring to himself as let's just say he's a psi researcher. He wrote a book called The Science of Magic, and he looked at this equation, the synchronicity equation, and looked at the law of probability and defining how likely, doing this research under these strict guidelines, very vigorous scientific empirical research under these strict guidelines, and he was determining the probability of how likely that is to happen with the evidences he found. And it had to be very, very unlikely, that law of probability, that probability of chance, and to be very, very small before he recorded it as data in his experiments, right? So, he recorded all data, but before he saw it as valid evidence for something, it had to be very, very small. And when we look at something like remote viewing, and we say, the probability of that is so small that remote viewing is actually real. But then you go down to the scientific research done, like at Stargate, and in the Research Institute that studies such data, Russell Targ was a big part of. And you say, okay, let's look at the research data and see how much of it is coincidence and how much of it is actual of low probability of occurring, so that making it more valid than it would be if it was a high probability, if chance was a marker. If we can remove chance from these experiments and just look at the data that comes out and say that, it's very unlikely that chance was involved here, that it had to be something else, then we're more likely to consider that data as being valid. The data research findings as being valid. So I recently did an experiment on remote viewing. I like to test this consciousness I have. I like to ask the question, who am I? Beyond my mind, beyond my personal mind, beyond my personality, beyond my body. Who am I really? What is consciousness, right? What is it capable of? through me, through this human I call me. And so I like to experiment with things like that. So I've been experimenting with remote reviewing off and on for the last year. I read Joseph Mononagle's book, The Secrets of Remote Viewing. I'm presently reading Russell Targ's book, Limitless Mind, and he's got a fascinating autobiography about how he came into the study of psi phenomenon, him being a physicist, stout, very materialistic physicist, who was an atheist on top of everything else. And this changed his whole perspective, and he started remote viewing. So I have been experimenting with it, and I see what Einstein meant by spooky action at a distance, because it really blew me away to see how precise some of the things I was coming up with were. And I have downloaded words. Thank God they're not numbers, because I would never get them if it was numbers. And these words come to me so clear, and I can't say I'm hearing them. I can't say I'm kind of seeing them, kind of hearing them. They're just popping into my head. So I'm writing them down. I put them over in the column that says analytical overlay, because in your remote viewing practice, anything that comes out and you think it's imagination, or it might be preconceived ideas that could interfere with what you're actually getting, you put them over in a column under AOL. And a lot of my stuff comes in the column AOL, these quotation marks and these words inside. But sometimes things come out of my mouth. I say, I have no idea how I got that, where it came from. Sometimes I'm piecing little pieces together and I can see it. But I'm very precise. I'm only putting down the words that I'm hearing and seeing. And sometimes my imagination comes into play and say, this is why I'm thinking this is why I'm, and I'll come up with these little ideas in my head, and if I follow those, I'll get lost. So I try to just put the words down that I'm hearing or seeing in quotation marks. And remarkably, they seem to be pretty precise. I've missed targets in the last practice. I did a practice a few days ago, and I did 5 in a row, and I had a target number, all I seen from a random online database, and I did the little practice following the strict protocol. And then when I get my evidence right away, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose the picture and I won't be able to provide that evidence later on, I won't be able to go back to it, so I get my picture right away, and I did that. Oh, that's not it. Next one, that's not it. Next one, oh my gosh, I am way off, and I was getting really defeated. So I did 5 of them, and on the 5th one I realized that my 5th picture matched the first picture or the second picture perfectly. Whatever I got for descriptions for the 5th picture, 5th target, matched the second or first one beautifully. Then I noticed another one matched another one, and not just a little bit, I mean a lot. And I did that 3 times. So if I were to line those 5 pictures out on a table and put my data findings, I could very well easily match like this. They didn't come out the way they were supposed to, but I could very well match, and they were very precise. And most of the stuff that was precise was these words that were coming to me. One of them, for example, was Arabic writing, because there was this loop-de-loop, and I've looked at the Arabic alphabet before, because I worked with languages and students who were Arabic, helping them with their English, so I wanted to review their alphabet. So I remember some of the little loops, but this was loop-de-loop, and it kept coming up, the same scribble. I said, okay, so I knew in my mind that was significant. And then it dawned on me, oh my gosh, that looks like the Q or the F in Arabic alphabet. And that just came in my head, so I just wrote down. I heard Arabic writing. I've not heard it, felt it, whatever it was, and I wrote down Arabic writing in quotation marks. And then I said repeated pattern, because it was the one letter I'm not familiar enough with the language or the writing to understand, but something just said repeated pattern. So I wrote down repeated pattern. Then, all of a sudden, I said, my mind jumped from the Arabic writing to Arabic woman standing alone. And I put that in quotation marks, but I put that over in the AOL because I thought, I'm just taking the Arabic writing and I'm thinking the most, I would think of an Arabic woman. And then I put in dark clothing in another set of quotation marks. Those are the words that came to me, but I was really thinking burqa. And I was thinking burqa, so I pictured an Arabic woman in a burqa somewhere with all this writing around her, and that's kind of what I didn't summarize it because I was afraid to, but that's kind of what I thought. And then when the pictures came up and I was matching, I realized I saw one of the pictures came up, and I also put prickly because I had the sensation of prickly. I also had this sensation of screeching, and I don't know why I had screeching and prickly. So, but the prickly was in quotation marks, and so the picture, when a picture came up, when I matched it with what I had, it was of this woman standing alone in dark clothing. She did not have a burqa on. Her head was covered. I couldn't tell. I also had ponytail in there. I think that's what was my way of telling me it was a woman. The ponytail word came to me, so I wrote down ponytail, but I think that was just to identify female. And it was a woman standing alone over a prickly barbed wire fence, looking in a building in the distance that looked like the roof of a mosque. I said, oh, okay. That's pretty well precise. Arabic woman standing alone in dark clothing. So that was like, whoa. So, but my mind tried to discount that as well by saying, how do I know she's in Arabic? She's not in a burqa. How do I know that's actually a mosque? The roof of a Russian Orthodox building would look somewhat like the mosque temple, How do I know that? Maybe it's a Ukrainian woman looking at a building in Ukraine or something during the wartime, because I had the sense of actually looking at, when I looked at the picture of wartime, I had a very strong feeling of wartime. But I kept discounting that as well as the other ones that were very, very precise. And then when I got back to reading what I wrote entries about it because I felt compelled to share this. I said, okay, if this is real, I have to share it, even if people think I'm crazy or whatever. And so as I was rereading what I wrote today, I wrote yesterday, I was rereading what I wrote today about it, and I got to the part where I was doubting it because the woman wasn't in a burqa. And I was listening to a podcast at the time on my phone, and I was nothing to do with any of this. And all of a sudden the podcast started, and an ad came on, and there was a woman in a burqa talking about her suffering. She was from Gaza. Mothers in Gaza, I think it was called. As soon as I was reading about the woman not being in a burqa, one showed up in that ad. Now, Dee tells me it could very well be AI just monitoring what I'm reading, and my phone and my computer they weren't synced at the time, but they're synced now, but maybe something came up with that. So maybe that was the thing. But anyway, I thought it was pretty coincidental. It was like meaningful, very meaningful, that the two, what I was writing at the time the picture was there, matched. There was a meaningful coincidence. The events of that picture and the events of what I were writing were coinciding in a meaningful way, meaning that connecting, that meaningful way usually means connecting to something strong and meaningful. And the probability of chance. Now, what would be the probability of chance of that happening? Very, very, very small. Tiny, tiny, tiny. So that to me was synchronicity. Wow, did I ever rave on again? Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day. Namaste.